Have you ever considered the modern condition as a form of cognitive burnout? It's a specific kind of exhaustion, not born from physical labor, but from relentless mental processing. It's the fatigue of running diagnostics on your own existence, moment by moment. We are constantly attempting to map our own psychology, chart the trajectory of our careers, and build logical frameworks to contain the chaos of human connection. We begin our days seeking data and end them chasing conclusions. In the space between, there is a pervasive hope that a single unifying insight will finally grant us permission to feel at ease. But here lies a fundamental paradox that our culture rarely acknowledges. Certainty is not a synonym for tranquility. In fact, the relentless pursuit of intellectual certainty is often the primary obstacle to achieving it. We are not to blame for this disposition. We were conditioned in a world that equates information with power and analysis with progress. The prevailing wisdom suggests that if we can deconstruct the why behind every impulse and event, we will master our lives. Yet mastery does not always arise from more aggressive thinking. Often it emerges from the cessation of it. Some truths are not problems to be solved by the intellect. The more we try to force them into logical boxes, the more we distance ourselves from authentic experience. There is a powerful, unstated creed that governs many of our lives. If I can just formulate a complete understanding of it, I will be at peace. We apply this to everything: our trauma, our past failures, the reasons people exit our lives, the mechanics of our own personalities. Unconsciously, we become addicts of explanation. We consume articles, academic papers, leadership seminars, and philosophical texts, all in search of that one grand theory that will finally validate our right to be calm. But here is the subtle trap. The analytical mind is engineered to turn serenity into a new problem to be optimized. It will take a moment of quiet, spontaneous peace and immediately subject it to interrogation. It asks, what are the variables that produced this state? What is the protocol to replicate it? What are the risks of losing it? In that instant, the experience of peace is over. You are no longer inhabiting it. You are dissecting it, pinning it down, demanding it yield a formula. Many of life's most meaningful states are not meant to be held by logic. They are meant to be experienced, absorbed, and released. The reality is, we don't always require more understanding. What we often need is acceptance. The acceptance to pause, to breathe, and to tolerate the ambiguity of the present moment. The freedom to allow life to unfold without demanding a minute-by-minute schematic, to state, I do not have the data for this, and still feel fundamentally secure. Because integrity of the self is not a fortress you build with perfect intellectual bricks. It is a home you return to when you stop trying to architect everything. Consider the state of flow in an expert performer, a musician lost in a piece, an athlete in the zone. There is no analysis, no self-critique, just pure, embodied presence. But at some point in our development, we were taught that non-analytical states were unproductive, that not having a ready explanation was a sign of deficiency. Now, even our moments of potential rest feel like another task on the to-do list. You sit in silence for 5 minutes, and the project manager in your brain launches a status meeting. What are my key performance indicators for life? Why is this emotional metric underperforming? Am I behind on my developmental roadmap? But that internal narrator, the one tasked with documenting and explaining every variable as if your life were a corporate audit, is not the core of you. It is a survival program wired to analyze threats and secure a feeling of control. And its function is draining, because every time you attempt to disengage, it pulls you back into the cognitive loop, framing peace as a complex equation you have yet to solve. But what if peace is not an achievement? What if it is the default state that emerges when you cease trying to fix a version of yourself that was never broken to begin with? You are not tired from a lack of action. You are tired from carrying the cognitive load of needing to understand everything at once, as if that is the price of admission for rest. Your value is not indexed to your analytical insights. It exists in your very capacity to be present, to breathe, to allow a moment to be exactly what it is without demanding it submit a report on its own meaning. There is a silent pressure in our society that suggests peace is a luxury for the fully optimized. That unless you have processed every trauma, mapped every emotional trigger, and resolved every internal conflict, you have not yet earned the right to relax. And so, we defer our own well-being. We create conditional clauses for our peace. Once I understand the root of this anxiety, then I will allow myself to rest. Once I decode the universe's lesson in this failure, then I will find calm. But this is a game of diminishing returns. The mind is a survival tool, not an engine of surrender. It will always crave one more data point, one more insight, one more layer of explanation. It promises that with that next piece of information, freedom will be unlocked. But freedom is not found in the accumulation of answers. It is found in a release of the belief that you are incomplete without them. Have you ever experienced a moment where, for no discernible reason, you simply felt grounded? The circumstances of your life may have been messy, unresolved, and complex, but some internal axis was perfectly still. That is the space your analytical mind cannot colonize. That is the territory your overthinking cannot control. And perhaps that is what true understanding feels like. Not a coherent theory in your head, but a somatic sensation of rightness where nothing needs to be different and you don't need a reason why. What if the objective was never to understand everything, but to live in a way where mystery is not a source of anxiety, but a source of awe? And here is the paradox. Even when you acquire a long sought after answer, its satisfaction is fleeting. You may experience a surge of relief, a moment of elegant clarity, but it dissipates. Because the moment the mind solves one intellectual puzzle, it identifies the next. That is its function. You analyze one aspect of your character, and a new shadow appears, a new cognitive bias to track, a new behavioral pattern to deconstruct. The process is infinite, but that is not a personal failure. We have been conditioned to believe our worth lies in our degree of self-knowledge, that healing is a linear progression up a ladder of insight. But profound peace does not arrive with a breakthrough. It arrives when you no longer need one. It comes from learning to be with yourself in the present moment without turning it into a self-improvement project. No analysis. No attempting to outsmart your own pain. No rewriting your personal history to feel you've earned a moment of quiet. Sometimes the most courageous act is to cease demanding that life makes sense, and to begin trusting the part of you that perceives, not just the part that conceives. Because the part that conceives is exhausted, and a part that perceives has simply been waiting for you to return to your senses. Think of the sheer energy expended just trying to feel stable, not even happy, just not disoriented, not overwhelmed, not lost in a labyrinth of your own thoughts again. Perhaps no one ever articulated this, but constantly operating in Y mode, that internal scanning for causes, patterns, and meanings is a recipe for burnout. It keeps you locked in your prefrontal cortex while your body is signaling for you to come home, to your breath, to the feeling of the ground beneath you, to be here, not to solve life, but to actually live it. There is a version of you that exists beneath all the cognitive noise. The you that doesn't need to understand an emotion to trust its signal. The you that can experience sorrow without labeling it as a pathology. The you that can feel joy without needing to justify it first. The you who lives in experience, not in explanation. But that version of you is quiet. It's subtle, and it is easily drowned out when you pursue clarity as if it were a scarce resource. Sometimes the most significant growth doesn't happen when you find the answer. It happens when you stop searching for answers long enough to remember who you are without them. This isn't about solving your mind. It's about returning to the part of you that was never confused, the part that always knew how to be still, how to be present, how to simply exist without needing a justification. You were never intended to live your entire life from the neck up, a disembodied intellect trying to think its way back into feeling alive. You scroll through data. You listen to confident assertions. You repeat affirmations you don't yet believe, hoping they will trigger a software update in your brain. And still, you feel tired because you're not just overthinking problems, you are overthinking your own existence. You are attempting to logically process emotions that were meant to be felt in the body. You are trying to explain away wounds that were meant to be held with compassion. You are trying to get ahead of life as if it were a complex system to be reverse engineered. But life is not a system. It is not an algorithm. It is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a somatic experience, a heartbeat, a change in light, a moment that arrives and departs, whether you have a framework for it or not. The more you try to grasp it, define it, and analyze it, the more the aliveness of it recedes. You are not flawed. You are not behind schedule. You are simply exhausted from the burden of needing to know. And in closing, a small practice. If you've reached this point and felt a shift within, anchor that insight. Write in the comments below the phrase, "I trust the unfolding." Let this be not just a comment, but your personal confirmation, the point from which new possibilities begin.